Good morning. It is Women of Strength Wednesday, and you are listening to special episode 24. And boy, are we excited. We're always excited around here, but we have some extra excitement in the air today. We have a very special guest with us. One of our very own VBAC Link trained doulas, Gina Conley from North Carolina. It's North Carolina, right? Or South?
North.
In North Carolina. All right. So those Carolinas get me confused sometimes. But Gina is totally rocking it. And you might have seen her around. Her Instagram is mamastefit. So it's kind of like namaste, like in yoga, but with an M instead of an M.
Very clever, by the way.
It is very clever. I love it. Mamastefit on Instagram and on Facebook. And she's getting to be pretty famous for her videos demonstrating pelvic floor movement and flexion and fetal head flexion and fetal rotation and different movements to really help get your body prepared for labor and how to help move your baby through the pelvis during labor. And so Megan and I have been really geeking out lately over this particular subject of birth. And so naturally we wanted to have Gina on with us. Before we get too far into it, I'm going to have Gina introduce herself after the intro, but I've just got to tell you, Gina's been with us since the very beginning when we used to, for our online classes, we used to broadcast them over Zoom. And Zoom is a great tool when you're one-on-one. But what we learned very quickly is that it's not great when you're teaching a class and broadcasting the class at the same time. So we are so glad that Gina still loves us after our very, very early stages of our online VBAC doula training. But now we have a full-fledged course. It is all video style at your own pace, much better delivery style, I guess you could say. So we are going to get right to Gina and all of her wonderful goodness fountain of knowledge after our little intro.
You are tuned in to the VBAC Link podcast with Julie Francom and Megan Heaton, VBAC moms, doulas, and educators here to help you get inspired for birth after having a C-section. Together, they have created a robust VBAC preparation course along with this uplifting podcast for women who are preparing for their VBAC. Although these episodes are VBAC specific, they encourage all expectant moms to listen and educate themselves on how to avoid a cesarean from the get-go. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not meant to replace advice from any other qualified medical professional. Here are your hosts, Julie and Megan.
All right. Oh, I'm excited. Megan, I know me and Megan have just been like, the last couple of kinds we've had in labor, we are just working through all of this different, where your legs are positioned to help the pelvis open in certain areas depending on where the baby's at. And even in our VBAC class for doulas now and our parents course, we have different instructional videos and teach differently how to help get these babies in optimal positions, especially for parents who had their C-sections because of a suspected big baby or who have been told that their pelvises are too small. There is so much science behind this, guys, and I'm so excited for Gina from North Carolina to talk to us more about these things. But before we get into the questions that we have for her, I just want to turn over to her for a little bit. And Gina, can you tell us just a little bit more about you and your background and what drew you really to this particular part of birth?
So I'm Gina. I'm the owner, head coach, and birth doula for mamastefit, and we are located in Southern Pines, North Carolina, near the Army-based Fort Bragg. A lot of people know us for the golf mecca Pinehurst, where I think the U.S. Open or something was held there. So I found my way supporting women during their pregnancy, birth, and postpartum after the birth of my daughter in 2017. I was actually transitioning off of active duty as an Army officer and getting ready to start grad school.
I did not know you were in the Army. I was in the Army.
For about 7 years, I was actually an Army officer.
Wow, I was a sergeant. So I'll just, yes, ma'am. You can go ahead and continue, ma'am.
I was the ma'am.
That's funny. I mean, not funny, but you know. All right, proceed.
So I started grad school when I got out of the Army for computer science at first, and I was super confused and totally hated it. And then mamastefit just kind of came to fruition, like kind of randomly. I actually don't remember how exactly I came to it, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to train women that are prenatal and postpartum and fitness training. And my husband was like, okay, cool, sounds great. And then, so I started at mamastefit, and then a fitness client asked me to be her doula, and I was like, sure, I'll go take a course. So I went to like Dona's course and have loved attending births ever since and supporting moms, and have really kind of dove into like the anatomy and physiology of birth, because there's so much mystery to labor and how people give birth, and there's a lot of anxiety and fear associated with it. But when you can explain things scientifically, it gives people a lot of tools that they can then use, and it kind of takes away a lot of the fear. And they're like, they understand what's happening. So my degrees are in exercise science and art studio. So I have a science-based degree and then one that's a little bit more fun. And I'm working on my master's in exercise science now.
Wow.
Taking a bunch of courses in anatomy and physiology of birth and fitness. So I feel like I'm pretty savvy, always willing to learn more. So yeah, that's kind of how mamastefit came to be and how Gina came to be the person she is right now.
Well, we love Gina, the prior service, former captain in the military. What was your MOS? Just curious.
I was an MP, actually, or military police
officer.
Gosh,
I was commo. So when you said you were taking computer science degree and hated it, I was like, that's literally what I did in the military. But the funny thing is that I was in an MP unit most of my career. So that's really funny. We kind of have this little connection with each other that we never knew.
We're meant to be.
We are meant to be. It's a good thing we found each other.
So I have this weird thing. This is not related to Army. But I have this weird thing about Gina that I should probably admit to her.
Oh.
Don't think I'm weird.
You're totally weird.
I'm obsessed with your legs.
Legs.
I'm serious.
Oh, she's blushing right now.
Oh, I'm
Megan's
literally
blushing.
obsessed with your legs. I love them. They're beautiful, and I want them. So
be careful, Gina, because
if you
Megan's
could give me your legs, if you could give me your legs, you could work mine out all day, and you could get them back to where you were. But I love your legs. I love your legs. Like, I love your videos, and I'm like, dang, look at her legs. Like, they're awesome. All right, we're gonna get into it.
We're gonna get back to the pelvis. Legs connect to the hip. What is it? The leg bone connects to the hip bone.
Oh, Gina! All right, we're excited.
All right,
Let's
Gina,
get into
with
some
the
questions
sexy legs.
Seriously though, go look at them.
Well, I'm going to as soon as I ask her this question because now I'm really curious. All right, Gina, we have lots and lots of parents being told that their babies are too big or that their pelvises are too small to have babies. And that's why they have their initial C-sections, and that's why they get talked into having repeat C-sections. So I want to know, what would you say to those parents, and what are some tips that you would give them to help them get ready for their VBAC or just their first vaginal birth?
So I guess I would first question how that determination even happened. Like, what tests did they do? Like, how did they determine that your pelvis is too small or that your baby is too big? Like, ultrasounds are not always super accurate, and even if they are and your baby is 10 pounds, women give birth vaginally to 10-pound babies all the time.
Yep.
So I would feel pretty confident in saying, like, if your previous C-section was because of failure to progress, it probably wasn't that your baby was too big. It was probably because your baby was in a less optimal position to descend through your pelvis for birth. And there's a whole ton with, like, fetal positioning. So you have babies that are head down, which is usually a pretty good way to give birth vaginally. Not everywhere can support breech deliveries. So if your baby's head down, that's awesome, but there's more to it. So your baby has to have its head also tucked. So if you put your hands on, like, the top of your head and you tuck your chin, you'll be right at the crown of the head. And it's much smaller than if you, like, look straight forward and you actually extended your head and then you put your hands on the top of your head. Like, that, opening is significantly larger. So if your baby is in your uterus and their chin is tucked, they're presenting a much smaller portion of their head to your cervix and vaginal opening. which is going to help their skull mold a lot better for a vaginal birth. I hope that makes sense. It's hard to do without my little models and stuff.
No, it totally did. I'm doing it right now. I'm like putting ask Megan, I'm like top of my head, and then I took my head, and I'm like topmost point. It is smaller. I mean, like,
it is. And so
obviously,
it's the same on
but
your
like,
baby.
It's really just cool to put that, just to feel it and touch it. Everyone should be doing that right now. If you are not doing that right now, then pause and do it right now. I'm too busy trying to find your legs. Okay, keep going.
So depending on where your baby is within your uterus can kind of influence whether or not their head is going to tuck. So usually you hear like you want your baby to be LOA. So your fetal positioning is referred to as like 3 letters. So first letter is going to be either an LOR, which is right or left. The next one is going to be occiput. I'm horrible at anatomy words, pronouncing them in real life.
Right.
So it's the back of the baby's head. So that's the reference point. And then it's going to be like an A or P or T at the end, which is which direction is the back of the baby's head. So either transverse, so to either hip, anterior, which is going to be towards the front, or posterior, which is the back. So usually you hear like you want your baby to be LOA, LOA. Like LOA is the best. Well, for 80% of women, LOA is a good starting point, but there's a 20% where ROA is going to be better. So what I mean by that is 80% of women, their uterus has right obliquity. So it leans towards the right side. So the right side of the uterus in most women is more steep, while the left side is going to be much more curved. So because the right side is more steep, babies tend to be more extended in their position or deflect, so their head is presenting a bigger portion towards the cervix, while if babies are on the left side, they tend to be more curled and their chins are tucked, so they present a much smaller portion. So that's why LOA tends to be more optimal, but even for, like, LOA is like the very, very beginning of labor. Eventually, you want your baby to engage in an LOT position, so being transverse to where their head is towards either hip. So LOA is important, but really it's the left side that's important for most women. But then there are like 20% where the right side is more important. So it varies from woman to woman, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. So how would you know if you are one of those 20%? Or what should you be, or maybe should we be focusing on something else besides where the baby is, like as far as LOA, LOR, LOT?
So what I like to focus on is how the mom is just moving on her own. So if you're unmedicated and you don't have an epidural, like you're going to move in a way that's going to help your baby descend. So like as a doula, I can see that, or like if I was a birth partner, like I could watch my the laboring mother or woman like do her thing, and based on how she's moving is probably how her baby needs to descend. So I don't know if that makes sense. So innate movement is really going to be a big indicator of what side maybe is better for somebody, as opposed to being so focused on baby needs to be in this position. This position is the best position. It's like, well, maybe it's not the best position for her. So if we can continue to support her in the way that she wants to move, like that's gonna help her even more. If that makes sense.
No. So what you're saying is that really allowing a woman to just be free to move how she feels inclined to, and really just like listen to her body and let her do its thing without tying her down to a bed is optimal. And sometimes you can watch and see like, okay, well, if she's doing a lot of things where like her right leg is up and her making her hips asymmetrical, that might be like her body's way of trying to wiggle baby down and into a more optimal position.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the other thing is if your body is balanced. So you have a lot of muscles that support your pelvis and your uterus, and you have ligaments that support your uterus and how it attaches to your pelvis. So there's so many different muscles and ligaments that all support everything. So the more balanced that we can be in all those muscles and ligaments, the better setup that the uterus is going to be for a baby. So baby's going to go where there's space, where there's room for it. And if like one side is tighter than the other, it's going to decrease the space on that side, and baby's going to be forced to be on the opposite side, which maybe is an optimal side for baby, maybe not. So if your ligaments are all fairly balanced within your uterus, and your musculature that surround your hips are fairly balanced, like your glutes both fire equally, like your hamstrings fire well, like your quads are both working well, like your back muscles are even, and then like the ligaments that attach to the uterus, so like your round ligaments, your uterosacral ligaments, like So those are all balanced. Baby's going to go where it makes the most sense for baby to be. And so if it's on the right side and you are a fairly balanced person, maybe the right side is better for you. If it's on the left side, which most people are going to be on, it's probably the left side for you. So there's a lot to trying to find that balance. So seeing like a Webster certified chiropractor is going to help with the ligaments specifically. Like they are trained specifically in pregnancy. And so there's a difference between like a Webster certified chiropractor and just any chiropractor. I'm sure every chiropractor wants to help women, but Webster certified ones are specific for pregnancy, and there's a difference in the way that they treat women. Or they provide care, not treat women. They all treat women well.
Yes.
But, the way that they provide care is differently. Working with a trainer that is specific for prenatal or postpartum, more than just somebody who boasts being an Instagram expert. So, like, I offer online and in-person programming for people. There are plenty of trainers across the country that have the expertise that I have to work with prenatal women to help them be balanced muscularly. And then seeing like a pelvic floor PT, even during pregnancy, can be really helpful to kind of see like, hey, this side of your pelvic floor is like way tighter than the other. Let's do some stuff to help loosen that up. Because really tight pelvic floors sometimes are asynclitic, where like one side is tighter than the other.
Yep.
And that can cause issues too for how the baby is going to position. So there's a ton of resources out there to help you find that balance within your pelvis area so that baby has the space to go where baby needs to go based on your own anatomy. And that's stuff you can do during pregnancy, which is pretty cool. And then Spinning Babies has some stuff too for the ligaments as well. Like they have like an online video that you can watch for like $20 or something.
Yeah, like the Three Sisters of Balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We love us some Spinning Babies. We took their course, their full day course when they came out here to Salt Lake City and just really learned a lot. And then we went to the evidence-based birth conference, and Megan and I each like divided and conquered. So we each went to one of the 4 workshops. Well, I mean, we each picked one so we could be at half the workshops, and then came back to each other and like reported. And Megan went to one on pelvic movement and how it matters during birth and labor. And I just learned so much more in her 5-minute recap of the course that my mind is just blown. And I literally like do my prenatals and everything differently with clients now, just teaching them how to create more room in their pelvis so that baby has an easier way of getting to where it needs to be instead of trying to force it into an LOA position.
Yes, exactly. And baby doesn't stay in LOA the entire length of labor either. Like baby's going to first enter your pelvis, or going to try to enter the pelvis in this LOA position, or maybe ROA, depending on. We'll go with LOA, since that's most people. Yeah. So baby's going to enter it kind of like an angle to get underneath that sacropromontory, so that like lumbar spine, that low back that curves inwards. Baby's going to kind of curl underneath that and then rotate into like an LOT. So back of the head is towards the left hip. So if you look at the top of the baby's head, it's going to line up with the most space of the pelvis. So the pelvis is wider side to side on the top, and the baby's head is longer front to back. So baby's going to fit in that LOT position, and that's how baby's going to engage. So it goes from LOA to LOT. So that's already a change there. So if we were only focused on LOA the whole time, we're already setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
After baby goes LOT, then it's going to do an internal rotation to LOA, move to the mid pelvis and pelvic floor. Pelvic floor is a buttonhole, so it attaches front to back, so front of your pubic bone to your sacrum, and then the different openings within it. So like side-to-side movements are going to be really helpful. So if you think about like a rubber band, if you pull it, and then you just keep pulling it in the same front-to-back direction, it doesn't get any wider. But then if you have someone grab a side and pull it sideways or diagonal, it gets wider. So it's the same thing with your pelvic floor. Baby's going to go in this LOA position again to kind of wiggle through in like a diagonal pattern to help make its way through that pelvic floor. And then after baby goes LOA, it's going to go to OA. So back is totally towards the front, tucked underneath that pubic bone.
And that's like a mid-pelvis, yeah? Is that mid-pelvis
no, this
or
is
outlet?
This is like +2, baby's getting ready to be born outlet. So baby does all these different rotations through the pelvis. So if we only focus on LOA or baby being in this one position the entire time, like it's not going to work. Like baby needs to rotate as it descends because different parts of the pelvis open in different ways. So it's kind of like when somebody's pushing and they're being told like spread your knees really wide to make space for your baby. It's like, well, make space for the baby where? Like wide knees doesn't open the pelvis
the upper
evenly.
Part of the pelvis and not the outlet when you're spreading your legs wide. So what you're saying is it's more important to focus on what station baby's at instead of how far dilated you are.
Yes. So usually dilation kind of matches, not always, with station. Usually it doesn't. It's so different for everybody. But station is so, so important. So if someone's like +2, like we're trying to get baby into that LOT position. So trying to get baby sideways. Somebody's like +1 to -1. So in that like active labor phase is usually when most moms will be. Like you'll just see moms start doing like side to side movements suddenly, or like uneven hip movements. Like she's going to lift just one hip at a time. That's usually my indicator that someone is probably a -1 to a +1. Like she's moving sideways. She's trying to make room in her pelvic floor right now to help baby descend through there. And then essentially when you see it head, it's outlet time. And that's when you want to focus on that internal rotation, like more neutral spine, like allowing room from the sacrum to move for the outlet. So they all have 3 very distinct. So inlet, we want to focus on the posterior pelvic tuck, so tucking the butt underneath. External rotation of the knees, or femurs, so wide knees. Wide knees, tuck the butt under.
And this
then
is
pelvis,
like early labor.
Sideways, diagonal. Yeah, so that would be like early labor. Like you're like super excited in your labor. You think it's going to be super easy because contractions are not that bad. Like, yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
And then you're going to start moving into that mid pelvis. You're going to want that sideways, diagonal type movements, uneven hip movements. So like this is when I would have someone walk up and down stairs sideways, or like curb walking is another one where you have like one foot on something higher, like side lunges. Anything that's like uneven in the hips is going to help baby kind of wiggle through the pelvic floor. And then pretty much once you can see your baby's head is when we want to focus on outlet movements, which is going to be opening the bottom portion of the pelvis. So those sits bones, we're trying to move them away from each other. So internal rotation of the femur, so knees in closer than ankles. You can still have wide knees, but the ankles just have to be out a little bit farther for that internal rotation, and it's going to open the bottom. So if you like sit on your hands and you find your sits bones or those like prominent like bony parts on the bottom of your butt, and you bring your knees together and then you bring your knees wide, you can feel when they go wide, they get closer together. When you bring your knees together, they get farther apart. So it's the same thing for birth. Like millimeters matter when you're trying to get your baby out. That is maybe not in like the best position ever, or even if baby is in an awesome position. And if you see like pictures and stuff of moms that are like just spontaneously giving birth, like on the toilet or something, you'll see that their knees are coming closer to one another. Like when I watch my daughter like use the toilet, like she brings her knees closer together when she's pooping. Like it's the same, like it's just an innate thing that we do, but we don't realize that that's what we do. Yeah.
Interesting. That's really good. And if anyone is wondering about like what all these terms mean or what these things look like, y'all need to go to mamastefit on Instagram right now, because her feed is just full of these incredible videos showing exactly what she's talking about right now. All right. So let's talk about pelvis shapes, because there's commonly known like 4 different types of pelvis shapes, but we know through like genetics and like interbreeding, like one pelvis shape marries another pelvis shape, and then they have babies with like a mixed pelvis shape between the two of them. You know what I mean? Like the Europeans marry into the Asians, and then those are 2 very different and distinct pelvic shapes. But now the pelvis shapes are becoming less and less defined into one of the 4 types. So we have a lot of women, me and Megan both being one of them, told that their pelvis is too small to get a baby out. But is there really a particular shape of pelvis that makes it impossible to get a baby out, or are there certain things that make a big difference depending on your genetics or your pelvis shape? And I know you talked about earlier that it's really hard to tell what your pelvis shape is, but I guess I'm just kind of rambling on now. So maybe you can pick on to one of those things I just said and just run with it.
I would say the type of pelvis that is not going to get a baby through is one that doesn't open or create any space. So if you have some sort of like immobility within your pelvis for whatever reason, either from an accident or like really tight ligaments or joints where your pelvis cannot move to create space, then it's going to be really hard for your baby to get out. But there's so many, like the pelvic types are so like all over the place, because like you said, like people are breeding with one another, and we're very like interracial at this point, to where there's no like, there are these 3 types, and if you have this type, you will not have a baby vaginally. I don't think that's fairly accurate. Now, if you marry someone and you're trying to procreate with someone who's like 4 times your size, like you might be setting yourself up for a really, really big baby. Maybe, I don't know. But generally, if your pelvis cannot move or you don't have the mobility to do so, then your baby might not be able to come through. But I don't think that's a very likely situation.
Yeah, not very common.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, what are some exercises that people can do to prepare their pelvic floor? And, we already talked about the uterosacral ligaments and their body for birth. Like, what are some things that they can do to help loosen up those ligaments and make sure that their connective tissues are nice and mobile and flexible?
There's no like one or two exercises that I could say if you do these, do you have a vaginal birth by any means, because there's just so much involved with it.
For sure.
So like we were talking about earlier, like there's a lot of muscles and ligaments that support the uterus and the pelvis, and if they are balanced, then baby's going to be able to find space to fit wherever it needs to fit. And if one side is tighter than the other, it's going to kind of pull the uterus in a different way and just kind of change the shape of the space available for baby. So things that I would include and what we do include in our programming are like leg-based movement patterns. So like squats or deadlifts or lunges. So things that involve your glutes, so your butt, and things that are kind of single-legged or staggered leg if single leg doesn't feel good for you, because we want to focus on those like unilateral sides, so that one-sided movement to figure out where the imbalance might be. So if you do some single-leg glute bridges and you find like, hey, this side is like way harder for me than the other, like you probably need to do some more reps on that side. So we want to focus exercise on like the posterior chain, so like your back sides, and moving in like a variety of planes, so like sideways, rotational, forward and backwards. There's a lot more in-depthness to it that I offer in my online programming and in person with people that dive way more in deep to like finding that balance. And so it's really hard for me to just say do these two exercises and you'll be good to go. I talked about before how Spinning Babies has the Three Sisters, which is huge on like balancing the ligaments of the uterus. They have like a daily essentials thing that that do some certain stretches for like the hamstrings and things like that support the uterus as well. So it's much more stretching based. Webster Certified Chiropractor is going to help a ton, and like even a pelvic floor PT. So if you have had a C-section before, and you haven't done any scar mobilization for your C-section scar, most likely you have scar tissue that is potentially adhering to different connective tissues surrounding your uterus that can like pull in a weird way. And so doing like scar mobilization is going to be huge. Now, if it's been like a period of time, or even it hasn't been a period of time since your last C-section, like you can go to a pelvic floor PT and they're going to be able to give you like an individualized assessment and then give you like a treatment plan that's just for you, because your scar is different than someone else's. We have a generalized scar mobilization plan on our website that was developed by a physical therapist. But again, it's a generalized, it's not individual. Like if you want an individual plan, you have to seek someone else specifically. So a physical therapist, particularly a pelvic floor one, is going to be able to see like, hey, is this scar tissue adhering to other things and how is it affecting the function? Those are the things that I would focus on.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
No, that's great. All right. So in just a minute, I'm going to have you tell people where to find you and how to find out more about your course. But before we do that, as a doula and as a VBAC trained doula, we want to know if you could give one piece of advice for a parent preparing for VBAC, what would that advice be?
Based on my knowledge of anatomy and physiology of the birth process, I think the most important thing for mothers who want to have a vaginal birth is to be aware of their innate movement patterns that they're going to have during labor. So essentially trying to go as long as you can without an epidural. Once you get an epidural, that innate movement stuff just goes away. So we're kind of left without that tool to help you figure out how can we create the most space to help your baby continue to descend. So that would probably be the biggest tip that I give for somebody that wants to have a VBAC is wait as long as you can. I'm not saying don't get one at all. Just try to wait until you're like at least 6 or 8 centimeters. Like baby is like, you've had a really good labor pattern. Baby is probably in a really good position. So that way we can see the movement that you have. Also hire a doula, preferably someone that is familiar with VBAC and also understands birth anatomy and physiology. So a VBAC link trained or certified doula. And then someone who's taking a Spinning Babies workshop is going to have that basic understanding. And then also just asking the doula, like, have you worked with a VBAC mom before? Like, birth is birth, regardless of how you've given birth before and how you plan on giving birth in the future. But there are some things that are, like, specific to the VBAC mom that I think is important for a doula to have some experience with, or at least be willing to say, I haven't worked with them before. Like, you would be my first. but I've supported all these other births.
Right.
So I wouldn't say it'd be a deal breaker, but I think it's important.
Absolutely.
Those are my recommendations to a parent prepping for, and take the VBAC Link course.
Yes.
Well, thanks for that shout out.
We have a really, really beautiful, pretty course that is a lot better than the one Gina took when we very, very first started. It's pretty, it's gorgeous, it's branded, it's at your own pace. It's lifelong access. You can take it as many times as you want. You can start as soon as you want, even before you get pregnant. You can find that information on our website, thevbaclink.com. But I want to talk about doulas. Gina was one of our very first doulas on our website. And you can go to thevbaclink.com/findadoula. That's all one word. And you can find a doula in your state. And as of the time of this recording, which is the end of October, we have 20 states in our directory and 4 countries now, which is like super cool. But by the time this episode airs, we're going to have even more because we've got lots of manuals shipped out and training courses shipped out to a whole bunch of other states as well. So if you're looking for a doula for your VBAC, which we highly encourage, go to our website, thevbaclink.com/findadoula. And if you're interested in learning more about Gina's in-person or online courses, you can find her under North Carolina in our doula directory, thevbaclink.com/findadoula. Click on North Carolina, and she's going to be right there. But if you want to get to her in a more direct way, Gina, what is your website and how can people contact you?
It is mamastefit.com. So everything's the same. Instagram, Facebook, and my website are all mamastefit.
Perfect.
On my social media, usually more Instagram than Facebook, because sometimes I can't post videos and pictures to Facebook at the same time, which is annoying. Anyways,
yeah,
I
totally.
post daily videos on like the anatomy and physiology of birth to help educate families. Just trying to take the mystery away from birth and give them tangible tools to use throughout their birth. So I have people like message me like daily. They're like, I used your tips and I had my baby, and I'm like, awesome. This is so cool.
Yes.
And then we have online fitness programs. We have in-person ones as well. Offer childbirth education courses that are mostly in person. I don't have any online classes yet. But I would totally like to connect with people that listen to this podcast. You can send me an email through my website as well. I have a contact form on there. And I'm super stoked to continue to support families even virtually. And I'm definitely really glad that I came across VBAC Link almost a year ago now.
Oh yeah.
And I've had so many of my clients that refer to your website for information that just feel so much more confident about their care, where they can go to their provider and they can say, no, VBAC Link told me this.
All these providers are like, what's a VBAC Link?
Like, I need to Google this.
That's awesome.
So there's just so much power in like the science of things and really understanding it. It's so much harder to like convince someone to make a fear-based decision when they have the education behind it, when they understand the research. And that's what you guys provide, and I hope that's what I'm providing for people too. So super stoked to be on the podcast today, or whatever day this goes on.
Yes. Well, and thank you. And I wanted to also spell your Instagram out. It's MAMASTEFIT. So Mama Stay STE Fit. Don't type it in MOMMASTAY fit. You won't find it.
It's like namaste, like yoga.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Yep.
But mama
But with an M.
Yeah,
with
an M. Yeah.
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 And we're going to tag her in our show notes, and we'll feature her on our Instagram page as well.
Yes, so just
give
go to
her
our
a
Instagram
follow.
right now.
Your mind will be blown.
Yes.
It will be blown in a good way. And we're excited for you guys to get to know Gina a little bit better and have even more incredible resources to help you prepare along your journey for the perfect birth for you.
Absolutely. It's a great tool.
Would you like to be a guest on the podcast? Head over to thevbaclink.com/share and submit your story. For more information on all things VBAC, including online and in-person VBAC classes, the VBAC blog, and Julie and Megan's bios, head over to thevbaclink.com. Congratulations on starting your journey of learning and discovery with the VBAC Link.